So we're live. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Delighted to be here. Thanks to the Thriving Talent team for making this possible. For those of you who don't know us, Thriving Talent, we're a boutique consultancy, training and coaching company headquartered here in Switzerland, which is where you're joining Catherine and myself from. And our mission is to partner with organizations to humanize the workplace cultures. And we look at that through the lens of enabling caring and career to drive greater inclusion and equity. So that's a bit about who we are, but let me pass over to introduce Catherine. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure, Debbie. I'm Catherine Hickel. I'm French, as you will quickly guess it from my accent. I'm a trainer, a facilitator, and an executive coach with Thriving Talent for 5 years now, Debbie.
Yeah.
I followed the design, the evolution of our leadership program made for women with potential. And I also happen to facilitate some of the specific modules we do, most of the time online. And I also personally accompanied a number of participants as their career coach through this journey, this leadership development program.
Fantastic. Thank you. Great. So Catherine, yeah, fantastic team trainer and coach. And in terms of my role, I am one of two CEOs. So we role model job sharing here at Thriving Talent. So Natalie Wilkins and I are co-CEOs. And my hat is one of many to keep ensuring that we're having the impact we want to have in Thriving Talent. And I'm also incredibly fortunate that I stay very close to leadership programs, gender neutral leadership programs, but in the last few years, especially on the female leadership programs. And so that's why I was invited by the team to come and join you, Catherine, today to share some of the expertise in terms of what makes a leadership program transformational. What are those key ingredients? So we've got half an hour to really share as much as we can in the smallest amount of time, Catherine, to really ensure we can pass any best practices, lessons learned that we've certainly gone through in the last 5 to 6 years. Okay, so let's get started.
Mm-hmm. Deborah, I know you often speak about how the successful end starts even way before the program actually begins.
Yeah, I do. And that's because it really is important. Many times when you're thinking about your leadership program, it's very easy to quickly go into the details of the actual leadership program. What are the different components of that program? And actually, what we've learned over the years is the success of this program will actually be defined by all the preparation. And so what I mean by that is the questions that we would ask to any organization who are going to invest, time, energy, money into such a program is, let's fast forward to 3, 6, 9 months, however long you're planning to do your program, and what happens next? What the so what test? Typically, a really good leadership program gives each participant the kind of clarity, the courage, the confidence to drive their own career, to empower their own future. And so when they've come through that program, and we know it can be transformative, there's going to be expectations. And so what's super important is, before you even begin, is imagine, here we are, 6 months later, we have got 15 very clear, very courageous females who know what they want next. Is our environment then going to offer them opportunities to develop and make some of those dreams that they've clarified during the program actually happen? And this is a really important systemic part of what you're going to put in place, because at the end of it, you need to be in a situation where your senior leadership team, your sponsors, are actively accountable for having opportunities in place. It's not necessarily always a promotion, Katerina, as we know. It could be, increased and a project with super visibility internally, externally. It could be an increase on budget. It could be an increase in team size. There are many variables, but actually you've got to do that brainstorming way before you even start thinking about the criteria for the kind of individuals you want to join. So that's why, as you say, I always talk to organisations and say, actually, before we've even started this journey, let's go to the end and look back and say, okay, what's possible now? And you've seen that. I mean, the amount of people that you've run trainings for and coaching on, you see them coming to the end of this. Right, I'm ready. I'm bold, I'm brave, and I'm going to do this. So that's really, really important. Of course, once you've done that, you want to get started. And then that's really where we look at, okay, so what are the ingredients of the program for success? And I'll probably come back to you on this one, because if I think of the pivotal role you've played in many leadership programs with us in Thriving Talent, is the theme of the introspection, when you're really inviting participants to actually take some space to self-reflect. So can you tell us a little bit more about why that's so important?
Indeed, if it was only a matter of skill building, there wouldn't be any problem. We wouldn't be there. I mean, we all know what to do, but we don't do it. It's like dieting. It's like anything. What gets in the way, and it's nothing rational, really. I don't have time. I don't have the energy. I don't have the right connections. I'll do it next year. I'm not sure I can. I lack the self-confidence. I think women wouldn't be where they are if it was only a matter of getting things done. So overall, self-reflection is essential in any leadership program, and that's not only true for women anyway. It's true for any program, because it fosters self-awareness to start with. Continuous learning will come with it, effective decision making, personal growth, of course, empathy. We speak a lot about empathy and how central this has become. Maybe 20 years ago, it's not a word I was using so regularly. Now we even speak about compassion, even more than empathy. It's self-reflection will also bring easier conflict resolution if that's one of the aspects that is blocking someone in their progression. Role modeling, adaptability is another one. So all these are critical qualities for any successful leadership and in any context. And it's through the self-reflection and the coaching and the moments where we cultivate that accountability and get the women to do their personal commitment, and we hold them accountable to that.
And
That's
I've got to
how we
interrupt
get
there,
there.
because I know
Yes.
I know one of the modules you do a lot of training on is that inner critic, where part of that introspection is identifying our own limiting beliefs and our own, I think you always use the terminology saboteurs. So like when you're like training and coaching on the saboteurs, how do they kind of get in the way when you're on a leadership program?
On day one, or already when we but there's one element of normalizing, and there's a lot of awareness action as well in there. So by realizing, oh, I'm not the only one, or other are thinking the same way, or she looks just so bright and brilliant, and she has it all, and she feels that way as well. So normalizing is an important aspect in there. And yes, we do work on individual sabotaging mechanisms, so the participants can run through some psychometrics or tests, assessments of all kinds. We're using positive intelligence, and that helps us demystifying then these the limiting beliefs, or spotting the inner critic, if not an actual imposter syndrome that gets on the way. So, and once this is raised, this comes up, this surfaces, half of the job is done. Then we can spot it. Then we can press pause and say, hey, who's talking now? And we can move on. And we do that through the whole program, and we reinforce it in the one-to-one coaching that's running in parallel. So we tackle these at 360-degree, really.
Fantastic. That's great. Saboteurs.
And I don't like to, we don't want to over generalize, don't we? And not everyone is suffering from these, and that's also great to have within the among the participants, the whole spectrum of women who are at different stage in their readiness to step up and do more and speak for themselves and own their space. And even those who have no self-confidence problem at all will learn and find fantastic food, will be nourished in the program. I just want to make it clear that it's not for those who lack of something. It's not. This is not what we're talking about.
Yes, no, absolutely. But it's a key part. The introspection is a key element of success for transformation.
So now, having covered some of these introspection elements, this is only one of the key ingredients we were mentioning. It's also important that we acknowledge that successful programs also include building skills elements, and you can address more of that, Deb.
Yeah, so again, most of this is what you'd expect, to have a transformative program, then part of that measurement is also introspection, but then skills building. So if I look at what are the key modules that make it more of a transformational learning program, then there's a couple that always really jump out. You said at the beginning, actually, we all know what we should be doing, but do we actually do it? And if I think of the modules around networking and increasing your sphere of influence and visibility, those two really stand out for me, because most of us will know, wherever you are in your level or your journey of leadership, then you typically will know that the foundations or the fundamentals of what we should all be doing in our networking and increasing our visibility. And often we don't prioritize it, we choose not to, or we don't feel equipped. And it's really important that in this journey you're going to take people through, is that there is some space for an awareness for, okay, what is my perspective on networking? How comfortable am I, or do I avoid it at all costs? Maybe I have to choose because the different networking events are not at the right time for me. And how do I feel about being visible? Often being visible can be associated with guilt. I don't want to take up too much space. I don't want to shine and be too confident, stand out too much. So it's two areas that are really important to actually go a little bit deeper and dig a little bit deeper. And again, this for me is where you do see a shift in transformation when you start seeing participants really having a very clear networking strategy. If I think of the tool we often use, Catherine, is the ABC. So it's very much first of all having that awareness of what is your perspective on networking and being visible, and with that awareness, if you notice there's some limiting thoughts, you can actually challenge them. But then the B part is about being visible. It's about being bold. It's about being brave, because most people have to get out of their comfort zone Again, that is often where the transformation happens, when we get out of our comfort zone. And it's also about being benevolent. And this is really important. Benevolence is really important to encourage to any participants of a leadership program. If they feel uncomfortable with networking or building visibility, it's a great entry point, because if you're focusing on helping others, indirectly you're becoming more visible, but it's a great way to get more comfortable with it. So it's really applying those rules of the boldness, being brave, being visible. And then the C part of our approach is the kind of the choice. And this is really about, again, a lot of individuals, when they go through these programs, the biggest barrier to networking and being visible is time. We've both heard this many occasions. It's time. And so the C, the choose, is about being strategic. It's really thinking, through this program, I'm going to become very clear, and I'm going to name what my career goals are. And no one else can do that for me. I have to do that through this journey, through my awareness, through the training, through the coaching. Once you've clarified what your dream goals are, that's when only each participant can really bring them to life. And that's where they've got to be thinking, from a choice point of view, who and what can help me? And being strategic by thinking, if that's the dream's goal, then are there some influencers there, some decision makers? What are the right networking events to go to? Because, as you know, we're all about balance and thriving talent. So this isn't about going to everything all the time. It's being very selective and strategic about where you want to shine and where you want to network. So what meetings do you really want to be visible in? What networking events do you want to go into, and pick the ones that are going to have the most impact? And I think that's a really important part of the balance between the introspection you spoke about and then the skill building. So there's a couple of those modules that I think are really, really important. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
So I was just going to follow up, because I talk about the kind of networking and the visibility, and you've talked about the introspection. And at the end of the day, we can put a lot of investment into leadership programs, but there comes a point when it's really about accountability and action. Like that's what counts. So we know that's a real critical part of the journey, where you can only do so much as an organization to provide the platform, but the actual real transformation comes from the participants. So what's your kind of views on that? How do we encourage that accountability and action?
In fact, it all goes in a cycle, almost. One element builds on the next, and vice versa. So overall accountability also serves as a catalyst for personal development and transformation, by promoting the focus, the motivation, as you were saying, a clear view on our learning needs, the responsibility, the resilience, the progress tracking, the relationship building, the ability to cultivate visibility and networks. So embracing accountability will in turn empower the individual to take control over their own career journey and developing themselves. So in our program, Deborah, for female talent, we cultivate that accountability at each step from the first day, through several channels. There's the individual coaching element that goes in parallel to the program, where we follow the different development. We know what happened the week before, and there in whole intimacy, we can really dig deep and customize and push our participants as we get to know them. And there as well, our knowledge of their specific sabotaging mechanism is extremely helpful, because we know what gets on the way. And then they have their pods, these small groups of 4 or 5 participants meeting virtually most of the time, on a weekly basis, to practice what's been developed, to further exchange, to show their vulnerability as well, be their authentic self. This is where tons of things are happening, and we saw that again at the closing dinner of one of our programs a few weeks ago, where they didn't want this to end. And they want to keep on staying accountable to, you
Yes.
said that you committed, and we want to keep on meeting, and I want to hear about you.
Yeah.
And then at each online module, there are specific exercise to prepare before, and then there's a moment for each participant to think of their personal commitment. So this is ongoing at each stage. And we know that when you commit in front of your peers, you increases the chance of actually moving to action. And then there is also the three-way discussion with the manager, the coach, and the participant. This is a unique opportunity to have a different type of conversation, to get out of the daily tactics and operational conversation, and have the participants stepping up in front of me, in front of the coach, in front of their manager, stepping up for themselves and speaking up, saying it loud, stating their career objective, and asking their manager, what can you do concretely
Yes.
to get me there?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And it's a really good point you bring in. And actually, Laura, thanks for your comment here, because you touch on this in terms of, the accountability is not just the kind of participants, it's also about the managers. You can have very clear goals, you can become braver, bolder, you can dare more. And actually there's a real accountability and responsibility for managers. So linked to what you were saying as well, Laura, in your comment, is that there needs to be a safe space. And so those three-way meetings you talk about, Catherine, are really important as a way to measure like a KPI, because in those three-way meetings, the discussions are had in terms of this is the goal, this is my career goal, and who or what can help me, Mr. or Mrs. Manager. This is really where the kind of the KPI starts in terms of as we come through the program, because it's very much about this is what I'm putting as my kind of stake in the ground. And I think that the accountability from the managers at the three-way, that's really important. A lot of programs that really transform because the managers are part of that journey. So it's not simply a case of a manager suggesting, I recommend this individual goes on a training program. When somebody signs up, one of their team, to join a leadership program, the success of that is also linked to the manager's accountability for actively sponsoring them, not just during the program or to put them on the program, but actually their own journey. And that's also a journey of introspection. What's my role as an ally? What's my role as a champion? What's my role to create that safe space to allow my team member to fully explore themselves, to your comments, Catherine and Laura. So I think this is a really important part, is that accountability for managers. And if you are about to launch your own leadership program, is ensuring that that's in place. And that's really the beginning of one of the KPIs, I think, Catherine, in terms of, measuring the success, is you've got that three-way meeting, and the outputs of that are then tracked thereafter, not just in that one off meeting. Every 3, 6, 9, 12 months is coming back to that to say, this is what you presented at your three-way meeting as your goals. This is the support I'm providing. How are we doing on that? Because ultimately, the true success of a transformative program is that we see that growth and development of that individual, and that is tracked continuously. So as I bring us into KPIs, what other KPIs, would you say when we're measuring success? And obviously anyone who's listening, do share your ideas in the comments too. This is really about an exchange of ideas and best practices. So Yeah, Catherine, any other KPIs that you know are really important if you want a transformative program?
I would measure the retention rate and its evolution in the specific population that is targeted. If you know your pain points as an organization, you know that you tend to lose women with potential or in the 2 years following a maternity leave or things like that, then you know which specific population to keep on tracking and track their progress in the following cases. In
Yeah.
a majority of cases, by the end of our 4 to 6 month program, first leads of career progressions start materializing already. At least we get visibility on a potential timeline, or there is
Yeah.
change in the air after a few months.
Yeah, so that's so true. You do see that, and then, as you say, you continue to track it. And I think linked to that is that accountability. And you mentioned it earlier with the kind of community is another KPI. So you're tracking, and hopefully the data in your organization will allow you to do this from an HR point of view. So you're tracking an individual's journey. You're also then looking how does that influence, your kind of pipeline into talent development and retention, as you say, Catherine. I think the other thing that is also a KPI that's not very obvious, but when you're running a transformational leadership program, it's really important that you harvest all the obstacles that you're hearing. So through your trainers, through your coaches, respecting confidentiality, but you start seeing themes of what typically gets in the way of advancing, whether it's a reality or a perspective. So that again, another KPI is looking at, okay, if we've invested, our time, energy, and money to do this big program. The ultimate goal, of course, is women, if it's a female leadership, are going to then, we're going to see that progression, as you say, Catherine, from their growth and development and retention. The other piece is looking at saying, okay, in that journey, have we also become more aware of what those obstacles are? And a KPI is about, well, and are we looking at those obstacles and putting actions in place to actually overcome them? And that's often not an obvious KPI, but it's a really important one from a system point of view.
Absolutely. And if you think, if you are running several cohorts of 15 people in parallel, there is a lot of data that is gathered consistently and systematically in many ways at each stage, formally through actual surveys and informally from us coach, as we witness, as we hear their pain points. So it gives us interesting insights on trends
Yes.
within the
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another KPI, is your awareness of those trends, as you say, which might not come through formal channels. So that's equally another KPI. And conscious, we're probably in the last 90 seconds. Another KPI that we find really useful is actually looking at the ongoing engagement. So part of the message with any leadership program is your responsibility to empower and support others. And I think maybe we can close on that KPI, that have a KPI that says how many of our participants then act as either mentors or have roles to play as part of an alumni. So they are also giving back.